All right. Well, before we get underway, I would like to thank everybody for attending tonight for our final presentation with Simon Rose, our second writer in residence. Before we get underway, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the people of the Treaty 7 region in the Métis Region 3. In southern Alberta, which includes Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, including Chickasha, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nation. In acknowledging the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region, we're giving recognition to the fact that this is their traditional lands, and while a shared home now, our ancestors were in fact guests and not owners. So once again, thank you all for coming out tonight. It's very hard. I know I said it before, but it's just so hard to really think that this is now over. This is our fourth week of having Simon do these presentations. And I don't know about everyone else, I'm sure we all are as well, but we're looking forward to now hearing from Simon and his writing. It's been great to get expertise and advice and his insight on writing topics these last couple of weeks. We love that. And it'll be great now to take a piece of his writing where hopefully he's using all those things that he's told us all about. And we can hear them.
Oh yes, I suppose I have to do that, don't I? I have to use
exactly
what I'm preaching.
Can't catch you now.
No.
But all right, Simon, I'm gonna make you the spotlight here, and I'll let you take it away.
All right, everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone's doing okay. For those of you who've been in these sessions before, you'll be hearing this again. But for those of you who are new, my name is Simon Rose, and I am the author of 18 novels for children and young adults on sort of topics that like science fiction and fantasy and adventure stories and things like that for children and teens, I suppose. But I do offer editing and coaching and consulting in all genres for all types of authors. I'm also currently teaching at the University of Calgary as a writing instructor, all online at the moment because of the pandemic. But I've also taught as well with Mount Royal and with Chinook Learning Services with the Calgary School Board as well for on a variety of classes on writing for children and writing for publication, writing for social media, writing for business, I believe, writing historical fiction, I think I did once before. I also do write articles and websites and do corporate work and things like that. In the previous sessions, if you weren't involved in those, we talked about writing for publication the first week. Writing for children and young adults was the second week. Last week, I was examining ways in which you can build a career as a professional writer. Now, tonight, as Eric was saying, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading from some of my own novels in this session, and then we will be allowing some time for some questions at the end, and we usually have time for that for people to ask questions on whatever they would like, really. So the first thing I will do, I will read. I will read from this wonderful book here first. This is part of my paranormal series. This is called Flashback. I'll just read from the back cover here what it says. It says here, a visit to the cemetery, a brush against a strange headstone, and Max's life is changed. He experiences flashbacks of a life that isn't his from a time before he was born. Some of the memories are pleasant and some are disturbing. Max also sees a boy that no one else can. He reveals to Max 20-year-old secrets that someone will go to deadly lengths to keep that concealed. To right a tragic wrong, Max must leap into his new friend's past, not knowing how his actions will affect his own reality. Now I shall read just the first section of the book here. Chapter 1. Are the restraints tight enough? Yes, of course they are. I told you I know what I'm doing. Now keep still, David. This won't hurt a bit. The twisted smile on the doctor's face told a far different story. Max struggled against the bonds securing him to the operating table as the old man's hand moved closer. Max clearly saw the hypodermic, the needle now only inches from his eye. The younger man with long blonde hair and pale blue eyes grinned as Max emitted a scream that he was certain that no one would ever hear. "You okay, Max?" Jeff asked. "You don't look so good." Max felt dizzy and disoriented, having to rest his hand on the taller headstone to steady himself. Max and Jeff had gone to grab some pizza that afternoon. It was the start of summer vacation, and Jeff had to stop and buy some flowers and then meet his grandmother at Queen's Park Cemetery. Jeff's grandfather had passed away about 6 weeks earlier, and his grandmother still liked to go and pay her respects and freshen the flowers beside the grave. The boys had just been chatting to Mrs. McNally, and Max had stepped away to give the two family members a few moments of privacy. He was standing by a tall, elaborate headstone mounted on a marble pedestal belonging to someone called Jonathan Dexter. There was a smaller headstone beside the pedestal. Before Max could read the name, his hand brushed the edge of the smaller gravestone. Disconnected, random images had suddenly flashed across his mind, culminating in the terrifying scene with the needle. "I don't feel so good either," admitted Max, running his fingers through his light brown hair and rubbing the back of his neck. "Did you hit your head or something?" Jeff asked. "I don't think so," replied Max, "but now I have this splitting headache." "Are you sure you're okay, Max?" asked Mrs. McNally with an expression of concern. "Yeah, I think so," said Max, forcing a smile, although his head was truly pounding and it must have shown in his face. "You going to be okay for the game?" Jeff asked. "You've never missed one yet." Max had almost forgotten that he was playing third base that afternoon, yet he knew he couldn't play feeling the way he did, even if he was reluctant to let Jeff know that. "You certainly do look a little pale, Max," remarked Mrs. McNally. "Maybe you should just go home," Jeff suggested. "I'll get someone to fill in on third, no big deal." "You might be right," said Max. "Sorry about the game." "No problem," said Jeff. "Jason and the others will be there. Are you sure you're going to be okay?" "Yeah," Max nodded. "You better get going or you'll miss everyone." "Well, we're about done here," said Mrs. McNally. "You go with Max, Jeff. Uncle Bill said he'd be here at 1:30 to take me home anyway." "You sure, Grandma?" "Yes, I'm sure," replied Mrs. McNally. "You go ahead." Jeff gave his grandmother a peck on the cheek, and he and Max made their way out of the cemetery. They waited for the lights to change at the nearby intersection. Sitting on the bench beside the bus stop was a boy around their age, in a black t-shirt and jeans with a thick mop of dark hair almost covering his eyes. He was staring right at them. Although Max was sure he'd never seen the boy before, at school or anywhere else, he looked oddly familiar. "Is he from school?" he asked Jeff. "Huh? That kid. What? Over there on the bench," said Max, just as the lights changed. "What?" Jeff repeated as they set off across the road. When Max looked again, the bench was empty. The boy must have gone, but as Max scanned the area, there was no sign of him. A bus hadn't driven by, and there was no way the boy could have gotten away that quickly. Max knew he'd seen someone, but he kept his thoughts to himself. He rubbed the back of his neck again. "You okay?" asked Jeff when they reached the other side of the road. "Yeah," Max assured him, "just that headache." I shall leave it at that. Now that is just the first. That's just the first book in the series. There was only going to be one book in the first place, but then it ended up having two sequels. And I won't read from the other books here, but I will tell you what it says on the back cover. This is the second one. This is Twisted Fates. This is the second part of the paranormal series. And this is what it says on the back cover, so it must be true. "A tattered photograph, a lock of hair, keepsakes of his mother have triggered strange dreams for Max, dreams of a dank prison cell and an oddly familiar teenage girl. But it's the disturbing vision of a train accident that convinces Max to investigate his mother's death. During his investigation, Max discovers a connection with Julia, a classmate with dark secrets of her own. Her mother also died mysteriously and was linked to Project Mindstorm. When Max learns that the project has been revived, he and Julia embark on a seemingly impossible mission across multiple shifting timelines. On the run and pursued at every turn by the powerful and ruthless Cain, Max and Julia engage in a desperate race against time to alter the fate of Max's mother and transform their own destinies. Sounds exciting. I'd read it, I must admit. And then there was a third one, which is right here. This was the third one, Parallel Destiny. And I'll just read from the back cover of this one as well. Max is haunted by a girl with green eyes. He ignores the odd visions, but then he meets the girl face to face. Her name is Julia, and she and Max knew each other once in another world, but now she needs his help. The borders between realities are thinning, and Alastair Hammond's experiments into the existence of parallel universes are dangerous and destructive. Marooned within a bewildering series of alternate timelines, Max and Julia are forced to fight for their own survival, to save the very fabric of reality from Hammond's deadly scheme. Well, those books sound very exciting, I must admit. But I'm not going to tell you any more about them because I'm going to tell you a bit more about one of the other ones now as well. Now, here we have, I've even made a note of where the page I'm going to read from. The Shadow Zone series right here. This is a story about parallel universes. And I'll just read from the back cover of this one so you know what it's about. This is the first one in the series. While watching intense flashes of lightning during a violent storm, Ben experiences mysterious and disturbing visions of another world, one very different from his own. In the chain of events that follow, Ben encounters Charlie, a girl from a dark version of Earth, a planet doomed by the effects of environmental catastrophe, where the leaders will stop at nothing to complete their deadly mission. And I shall read from, this is the second chapter actually, but I'll read from the beginning here. As the thunderstorm began, Ben raced across the parking lot and ran up the steps of the old office building with the large green copper dome. There was just enough shelter under the pediment above the building's front entrance, where a date in Roman numerals was carved into the stone. The rain was extremely heavy, and hardly anyone remained on the sidewalks as they sought whatever shelter they could find. Fierce lightning flashes followed each other rapidly and lit up the whole street. Ben wondered if any of the trees or the statues in the park opposite might be hit by a lightning strike. Standing alone at the top of the stone steps, Ben watched as the cars raced through the narrow river that had formed in the middle of the street, spraying water against the shop windows on the opposite sidewalk. Noting the emerging brightness over the western horizon, Ben knew that the storm would be short-lived. He resolved to stay where he was, keep dry, and watch the spectacular electrical show around the nearby high-rise office towers and other buildings. Each burst of lightning seemed to be brighter, longer lasting and more intense as the storm passed directly overhead. A brilliant flash of light was followed by a deafening crack of thunder, and Ben saw a woman and a young girl coming up the stone steps. Yet when the lightning stopped, the two people were gone. When another intense flash occurred, Ben was startled to see the woman and the girl directly across from him at the top of the steps as they approached the building's main entrance. The girl seemed equally surprised when she looked directly at Ben. She appeared to be around his age with shoulder-length blonde hair. The woman also briefly glanced at Ben, but then the two people vanished the instant the lightning ceased. Ben quickly scanned his surroundings, but there was no sign of the woman or the girl. Ben wondered if they'd gone inside the building, but he hadn't seen the door open. Ben shuddered when he wondered if he'd seen a pair of ghosts. After all, the building was very old. He shuddered again as icy raindrops dripped down his neck. By now, the storm was beginning to subside, so Ben hurried down the steps and quickly made his way home. And I won't read any more from that. I'll just leave you hanging there. But there are two more books in this series as well. This is the second one. Into the Web is the second one in this series. I'll just read from the back cover of this one here. On a doomed version of Earth, the sinister schemes of the Ministry are moving ever closer to completion, with dire consequences for the inhabitants of two worlds. For Ben and Charlie, an unlikely alliance, unexpected reunions, and the mysterious prophecy of the chosen one offer a glimmer of hope, while the ever-present prospect of betrayal as they embark on an unpredictable journey into the unknown. And then we have this one here. This is the third one in the series. I shall read from the back cover of this one. In a dark parallel world, following attacks by its most determined opponents, the ministry has been forced to change its plans. Yet the ruthless Director General is prepared to sacrifice anyone to achieve an entirely new beginning, no matter what the cost. In a deadly race against time, as events spiral out of control, Ben and Charlie must risk their lives in a desperate attempt to save two worlds from destruction. And that was a book. I published that book, or that series of books, I should say, in 2017, I think. Yes, they were self-published on Amazon in 2017. And appropriately, I suppose, I am about to release very soon. I'm just putting the finishing touches to my historical fiction series, which is coming out. Well, it's already done and everything, and I just need to get everything formatted and things, and get it on Amazon. The covers are done and everything, and those books will be available, I would think, probably in January. But I can certainly read from those, because they are very new indeed, because they're going to be coming out, as I say, next in the next couple of months. Now, the Stone of the Seer, as in somebody who can see into the future. The Stone of the Seer is an exciting historical fantasy series of adventure novels for young adults, primarily set in the turbulent period of the English Civil War. Now, the Stone of the Seer is the first book in the series, and it features the Vikings, Leonardo da Vinci, and the political turmoil of the 1640s. At Habington House, Lady Elizabeth Osborne, Kate, and Tom encounter a magical black stone, mysterious ancient manuscripts, and the incredible time-viewing device known as the Tempus Inspectoris, all while under constant threat from the mysterious witchfinder, Daniel Toombs. And that's the first book. That'll be out. Oh, I would think that will be out. Yes, that'll be out just after Christmas, I think. The second one will be out probably in the summer, and the third one probably in the fall of next year. But the second one is called Royal Blood, and is book 2 of the series. And in this book, Lady Elizabeth Osborne, Kate, and Tom, along with the Tempus Inspectoris and the mysterious Black Viking Stone, are in the heart of London in early 1649 as King Charles prepares to face his accusers at his trial in Westminster Hall, while Elizabeth, Kate, and Tom desperately attempt to evade capture by Daniel Toombs, the witchfinder. Now, the third one, appropriately enough perhaps, is called The Revenge of the Witchfinder. This is book 3 in the series. Most of this takes place in the present day and features weird dreams, disturbing visions, parallel lives, and a bewildering identity crisis, as Thomas and Katie discover to their horror that not even the passage of centuries can prevent a bloodthirsty witchfinder from the 1640s from seeking his deadly revenge. Now, I probably will. Yes, I can probably read. I can read part of the one of the early chapters of the first book, because it is about to come out, so I don't mind doing that. So here we are. This is from the first book, which is called The Stone of the Seer. As the cart trundled along the uneven road, up ahead, Tom saw a group of people gathered beside a tall tree. As the cart drew closer, to his horror, Tom saw a young woman with a noose around her neck being lifted into the air as the rope was pulled across one of the thick tree branches above her. He turned away as the choking woman frantically kicked her legs before the struggling abruptly stopped. A few of the people standing by the tree turned to look at the cart as it approached. A grey-bearded man wearing a black hat and a long black coat then suddenly stepped into the road, forcing Ned to pull the reins and stop the cart. "Ned Wallace," said the man, pointing his finger at him, "your mistress will not escape the Lord's justice for much longer. Her evil deeds are known to all, and she will soon face judgment. Mark my words. He stepped toward the cart, fixing Tom with an icy stare. Who are you, boy? The man demanded. He's just a farm lad, said Ned, an orphan, nothing more. He'll be tending to the horses and helping with my work at Habington House. The man in the cloak smiled, exposing several missing or blackened teeth. Take great care, boy. There is evil at that house, and the spawn of Satan himself is its mistress. Sir, called the man in the group standing behind the tree. Shall we cut her down? Tom shuddered as the man in the cloak smiled at him again, then turned away. Yes, cut her down, he said. Put him in the cart with the others. The man then walked over to rejoin the people beside the tree. Ned pulled on the horse's reins, and he and Tom resumed their journey to Habington House. Who was that? Asked Tom, once they travelled a little further along the road. That's Daniel Toombs, the witch finder, Ned replied, looking directly ahead. Witch finder, said Tom. What do you mean? Toombs has taken it upon himself to seek out witches in this area. He sees it as a sacred duty. I'm sure you know about the Levelers and all the other groups that are around these days. There are so many of them. Some people even think that the end of the world is coming, and that's why there are so many witches and demons in the world right now. What did he say about Lady Elizabeth? My lady is skilled at healing and in the sciences, Ned replied. Toombs and people like him accuse her of witchcraft and other such nonsense. Tom frowned. Is it safe at Habington House with people like that in the area? Don't you worry too much about that, lad, Ned replied, smiling. You'll be far too busy once we put you to work. Yet as they continued their journey in the cart toward the house, Tom shuddered when he recalled the woman that had been killed, wondering who in the area might be the witch finder's next victim. As I say, that one will be coming out in January, and after that, the sequels will also be published next week because they're all ready to go and everything. So, another book that I was busy writing this last year. I think we have time for this one as well. A book that I was writing this year was my latest project, which there's still some work to be done on it, but the first part of it is done anyway. And this is called The Excalibur Experiment, and it's a magical fantasy novel for younger adults set in a dark parallel world in the early 1940s, where two young Canadians face a desperate situation after Germany has occupied Great Britain in the early years of World War II. So I do have some. I can certainly have, as I say, most of this first part of this series completed, and we'll be working on it a bit more. But I can certainly read from it from what I have at the moment. I can read. This is chapter 1. The Excalibur Experiment. Chapter 1 is called The Drums of War, and this is just the first part of the story. Cambridge, England, September 3rd, 1939. In the clearing in the middle of the woods not far from the river, the boy stood perfectly still, focusing his attention on a small rock that lay on the ground. As he stared at the rock, it began to move, just slowly at first, back and forth across the grass. He then concentrated more intensely, and as he extended his right arm in front of him, the rock slowly rose, hanging suspended in the air. The boy smiled, then with a sweep of his hand, the rock flew at high speed into a tree on the far side of the clearing, breaking one of the tree's thinner lower branches. You shouldn't be doing that, Nick, said his sister Ginny as she joined him in the clearing. It's fine, he said with a shrug. Ginny frowned. It's not the same as it was when we were back home in Canada, she replied. Out in the countryside where no one could see us. And who's going to see us here? Nick asked. When was the last time we saw anyone in these woods? We've been coming in here all summer, ever since we arrived in Cambridge, and we've never seen anyone at all. True, said Ginny, but you know what Dad said? Come on, what harm will it do? Said Nick with a smirk. We need to practice sometime, don't we? Ginny sighed. All right, but not for long. Although Nick and Ginny were non-identical, they frequently had the same close connection that many twins experienced. They both had dark blonde hair, his cut short and hers longer and often tied back with a ribbon. They shared the same blue eye color, something they'd inherited from their late mother. and you could certainly tell that they were siblings. Their facial features, along with some of their mannerisms and expressions, combined elements from both of their parents. Their father, Robert Jennings, often remarked if either of them said or did something that reminded him of their mother, who died just after they were born. They'd recently moved to England when their father had accepted a posting at Cambridge University. Ginny raised both her hands as a strong breeze blew through the trees surrounding the clearing. As Nick watched, she moved her hands as if she were gathering in some invisible substance, until she seemed to be holding a swirling mass of air between her outstretched fingers. "You're getting better at that," said Nick, smiling. "Yes, but it's still hard to keep it constrained for long," she replied. She furrowed her brow and gritted her teeth as she struggled to maintain her hold on the miniature whirlwind. Without warning, her grip was broken and the swirling air shot up into the air above the clearing, causing the tops of the trees to sway violently from side to side. "Let's hope no one saw that," said Ginny. "They'll just think it was the weather," Nick remarked, clicking his fingers repeatedly, causing tiny sparks to flutter from his fingertips. "Still no luck with the fire?" said Ginny. "It'll come," said Nick. "I just need to practice. That's what Dad said about both of us." Ginny nodded. "And supposedly Mom really had powers like these too. That's where we get them from. It's a shame there isn't a storm brewing so we could practice with the lightning." "Should we try the shrinking one again?" Nick suggested. "Surely we can get it to work by now." "Okay, just once," she replied. "Don't forget, we need to get back." "All right," said Nick. "Let's do it here." There were some brightly colored flowers with long stems nearby, along with a number of pine cones from the surrounding trees scattered around them. They looked directly at each other, then nodded once before closing their eyes, their brows furrowed in intense concentration. Suddenly, Nick and Ginny became an inch tall, more or less the same height as the pine cones, although the flowers and stems were now as high as the trees had been. The trees themselves now towered above them, as they both looked up in awe. "Oh my God," Ginny gasped. "It worked. It really worked." "I never thought we'd get that spell to work," said Nick. "What do we do now?" "Well, I guess we could explore a little," Ginny suggested. "Maybe we can head over to the river." "Yeah," he agreed. "It's not that far from here." Yet before they could take a step forward, they abruptly returned to their normal size, and the flowers and pine cones were once again at their feet. "Did you do that?" said Nick. "No, I thought it was something you did," she replied. "Maybe something you didn't mean to, like thinking about us being our normal size again." Nick shook his head. "No, I was just thinking about us heading over to the river like we decided." "Well, I guess we'll just have to practice, but it's good we were able to finally shrink," she said. They were both startled when the bell at the nearby church rang, indicating that it was 11 o'clock. "We better get home," said Ginny. "Dad said we have to leave early if we're going to get to the restaurant in time for lunch." They hurried out of the clearing and raced along the path that led out of the woods. It was almost 11:15 by the time they got home to the whitewashed cottage. They didn't have any close neighbors, and there weren't any homes nearby, which suited their father. He said that the isolation helped him to be able to work on his books and do research at the weekends, in the evenings, or in the summer when he wasn't working at the university. They saw the dark blue car parked outside the cottage. Their father had bought the car just after they'd arrived in England in the summer. They both remembered how weird it had seemed at first with the steering wheel on the wrong side of the car, although, of course, as far as they were concerned, everyone was driving on the wrong side of the road too. Still, they got used to it relatively quickly, even having to make sure they rode their bikes on the correct side, although they did occasionally break the rules if they were out in the woods or somewhere like that. The car was facing the paved patio, beyond which was the lawn and garden. The cottage belonged to the university, who sent gardeners periodically to maintain the flowers and plants, trim the high hedge, or prune the tall, mature trees when needed. Nick and Ginny breezed inside, past the phone that sat on the little table beneath the mirror and coat hooks on the wall beside the front door. At the bottom of the stairs, the door to their father's study was open, but it sounded like he was in the kitchen listening to the radio. The dining room was adjacent to the kitchen. It was quite small, with just enough room for the table and chairs. The family didn't use the room much. Excuse me. Unless Robert had someone coming over from the university, and they tended to eat most of their meals in the kitchen. As they entered the kitchen, still chatting to each other, Robert was about to sit down at the table. He was just over 40 years old, tall and slim, his wavy dark brown hair slicked back from his forehead. Since it was Sunday, he was more casually dressed than usual, but he always looked smart. Robert turned to them, then gently put his finger to his lips, urging them to be quiet. He was frowning as he listened to an announcement coming from the radio, which stood on the kitchen counter. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that, unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently, this country is at war with Germany. Robert sighed heavily, his brown eyes watering slightly as he reached over and turned down the volume on the radio, not wishing to listen to the rest of the broadcast. What does it mean, Dad? Asked Ginny. Are we really at war? Nick added. Robert nodded as he gently rubbed his neatly trimmed beard. It looks that way. That was Mr. Chamberlain, the Prime Minister. As you know, he's been talking to Hitler ever since last year, trying to avoid this step. It's a very sad day. What are we going to do? Said Ginny. Are we going home? Nick asked. Back to Canada? Robert shook his head. No need for that. Things will certainly be changing here in England in the coming months, but I have my teaching work to do here at the university, and you two have your new school to think about. I'm sure you're both going to make lots of friends once we're all settled in. The war probably won't last long anyway. Now, how about that birthday lunch I promised you? After all, it's not every day you both turn 13, even if your actual birthdays were a couple of days ago. He smiled, but he still looked very concerned about what he just heard on the radio, no doubt wondering, as did Nick and Ginny, what the future might hold. So you're all very privileged there, because that's a book that was only written in the summer and finished off in October, I think, more or less. So that I'll still be working on that for some time yet, and that will be coming out. It won't be coming out for at least another year, I would imagine. So if anyone has any questions about anything, by all means, go ahead. I think, Eric, if you're able to host some questions, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just see if we get some coming in here. I think most people right now are just saying exciting and thank you. So we'll just give it a minute here to let them. Oh, there we go. So someone would like to know, do you write the back cover blurbs?
If that's a question to me, then yes, I do. And with the one about the English Civil War, I actually was back in the summer. I was talking to my cover artist, and and she had wanted me to send her the back cover blurbs, and I realized I hadn't written them yet. I neglected to do that, but so I normally I got an idea for the back cover blurb quite early on, I think eventually with I've got a back cover blurb for the one I just was reading from about World War II, but if it turns into 3 books, I'll have to think of another 2 back cover blurbs as well. It's because it's not just the back cover blurb is not just for the back cover, of course, because it does form the description of the book on places like Amazon and other places online, and also on if you have a website, you have to. It's the same description that goes on there as well. So it's very important to do that, and sometimes it's not as easy as you think, because you've been writing the whole thing, and you've basically got to write a concise description of your own book that in about 3 or 4 sentences. So it can be a bit of a challenge sometimes, but long answer, yes, I always do mine. Yes.
All right, perfect. Someone else would like to know, for your trilogy that's publishing next year, what is your main reason for writing all of it at once?
Well, I was writing it all at once. Well, I basically had the urge to write it all at once. I had the story ideas all at once, and I couldn't stop writing it really, because if I'd have sat down and left it, I suppose, and maybe come back to it later on, which I have done with some of the others. With that particular one, no, I was excited enough to write it. I think all at once. The one about the parallel universe, I'd written, I think the first 2 of those, and then I hadn't written the 3rd one. But then I didn't think there was going to be a 3rd one. But then later on, it seemed like there was. And the one about World War II that I've just read from, that was originally probably only going to be one, but then it's turned into I think there's a fair chance that it will probably end up being 3 books like the others as well. And I have an idea even of where I can where the story will be able to be separated into 3 and things like that. So usually it's because it's exciting. I wouldn't want to wait too long. I don't think before I wrote another episode. Although the one I read from earlier, the paranormal one about ghosts and gravestones and goodness knows what like that. I have got ideas, and I've started writing it. Actually, I've got ideas for there are 3 books there, and I've got ideas for a 4th one and probably a 5th one and a 6th one. So, and I didn't for quite a while. I was. It wasn't that I didn't like the story. It's just that I wanted a break from the paranormal. I suppose I wanted to do other things. But then I started to get some ideas for stories which it didn't seem to be a fit for one of the other ones I was working on at the time. And then I started to realize that maybe I was getting ideas for this for more books in this paranormal series. So yeah. There was another question there which I did see flash on the screen, but I don't know what it said.
Oh yeah, no. So the next one up just said, do you find it matters what time of year you publish, or do you just publish when the stories are ready?
Well, the ones I did myself, the ones about the Shadow Zone books about the parallel universe, I did publish all those at the same time, because I thought, well, they're going to be on Amazon at the same time anyway, so I might as well just put them all out at the same time, and then put them on Amazon at the same time publication. And they came out, I think, in September, and that was my thinking on that. It was because the schools had just gone back and things. But I think if you're going to try and people will probably tell you that you should probably try and publish with the Christmas season in mind, to take advantage of a busy buying season. But that's I don't know if changed is probably the wrong word, but that's certainly different now, isn't it? Since we've had the pandemic and things like that, and so much stuff is online and everything these days. So I would have liked to probably have got the first one of this new series to come out maybe around October time, so I could have, or September or October, so I could have built up a marketing campaign, I suppose, in advance of Christmas. But I'm not sure how important the actual Christmas season is compared to how it used to be in the past. I mean, it may go back to the way it was, but at the moment, I don't think it's. I wasn't overly concerned about getting it out in sort of November and December. So. And if it turns out that I might not be able to get the book out, the first one out, until say, December 10th or 15th or something, I would miss most of the Christmas season anyway. And of course, although it is a busy time, the Christmas season, everybody else thinks the same thing too. So that's the thing. Everybody else seems to think that everybody else is trying to sell things at the same time. So there's a lot of competition. So in the end, I will probably do. I'll probably release this book, the first one anyway. I'm thinking I'll probably put it out in January. Is maybe, or it might be February time, and then around Canada Day I might put out the second one, and then maybe the third one in September. But I'll stagger it. I want to stagger it this time rather than put them all out at once. They will all be out at once eventually. And there will be some sort of box set next fall, I would imagine, of all 3 books at a discounted price or something like that. But it's all still a bit up in the air.
Perfect. So our next question.
I think somebody had mentioned about writer's block again, haven't they?
Yeah. So but we have one just before that. So there is one here.
Oh, okay.
Asking how many of your books include magic, and did you make up your own type of magic?
I think I probably did for this latest one. The World War II one certainly has magic in it, and magical spells and this sort of stuff. The how many? Well, I'd have to count them now. How many of these books involve magic? Because some of them do, and not all of them. The one about the World War II one involves magic. The parallel universe one does not. It's more like imaginary technology in that one. And the paranormal one, I suppose you could say it includes a form of magic, because it's in terms of people going back into the previous lives of other people through hypnotic regression at times. Now, whether you could call that magic, I suppose. But no, not always magic. I haven't been in any books that involve science fiction in terms of space and things like that. Although I have done books that have involved imaginary technology and evil scientists and that kind of thing. So there are some, magical objects and things like, maybe half of them involve some sort of magical object. If not magical spells and magical powers and things, then there's probably some sort of mysterious magical object involved, which is at the center of the story at some point. And there was a question, I think, about dealing with writer's block.
Yeah,
or
so
something.
The next question just is, how do you deal with writer's block? Are there periods where you just don't feel like writing? And if yes, how do you come out of it?
Well, I've always had those periods. I think ever since I've been doing this and trying to write books, there have always been periods where I've been haven't felt like doing the writing that I'm supposed to be doing. I think that's what it is. I've been quite fortunate in that I've often been doing other projects. Either I've been working on editing or consulting on somebody else's book, or I've been writing somebody's website or some corporate writing, or an article on some sort of topic. So I've always been able to switch. If I've not been able to focus on my own novel and trying to get something done and to create some wonderful adventure story, then I've usually had something else that I could work on, and to get me moving again, really. And I think I mentioned in one of the other sessions, I think sometimes as well, although we do everything on computers and everything, if I'm struggling with motivation to get moving on writing, I will take pen and paper and go to my local coffee shop and work on something there, away from the distractions of the computer, and that seems to help me to deal with any sort of, I wouldn't call it writer's block, because that almost implies that I'm out of ideas. And it's mostly, it's not even out of ideas, and it's not being out of inspiration. It's being, you just can't, it's just going to be too much work, and you can't be bothered to get started on it. But I find if I go to a coffee shop and I've actually bought a coffee, and I'm sitting there at a table with my pen and paper, and I've got my maybe I printed off some parts of the outline of the story or one of the chapters I'm trying to work on. Once I'm actually in the coffee shop and I've bought the coffee, I tell myself, well, you could quite easily have made this coffee at home yourself. So you've made a special journey here. So you really should make an effort, because I'm there on my own at a table in a coffee shop. And so there's nobody else to talk to. So I really have to do some work. And it does work. Usually it's a limited time. I'm there for maybe a couple of hours, but I usually get quite a lot done. And that's one way of dealing with it. I think as well, sometimes you just do something else. If for some reason you don't feel like writing, if you've got other things that you can do to occupy your time, if you've got if you've got a dog that you can walk and get out and about, that helps as well sometimes. So I usually just do something else, and it usually unlocks the writer's block, if that's what you want to call it.
No, that sounds great. We do have one more question here that just asks, have you pitched any of your novels as TV or movie scripts?
I have tried. It's not something I've been able to focus on as much as I would like to. I have the one about the parallel universe that I was reading from earlier, the Shadow Zone book. Once I knew how to format screenplays, and I'd written quite a few plays before for kids and things, so I knew how to write scripts. I did create the first episode of a TV show, and I did try pitching it to people, and I'm as a script, and I'm a member of quite a few different sites online that where you can sort of hopefully people are going to contact you and be interested in buying the rights to your material to turn it into TV series and movies and things like that. But it's mostly been a case, as with a lot of things, I suppose, in life, a lot of it's been a case of not being able to focus on it as much as I would like, I suppose. And that's, but yes, the answer to that is I would, I have got a synopsis for a TV series for that particular book. The paranormal one as well. I have attempted to create episodes for that for a TV show as well, and yes, so I've tried. I just need to focus more on it, really, I think.
Oh, that's perfect. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? I don't know if you can't see or hear people just typing away right now. We'll just wait a second just in case.
Yes, no problem.
All right. Well, I guess people could put their hands up if they could raise their hand on their thing if they have a question. I'm about to cut them off. But oh, here we go. There is one. Do you try to have both boy and girl heroes?
Yes, I do. Usually, generally, I think in the first book, this is a long time ago. I think in the first book there was a boy as the hero, and his I think his little sister got into trouble and he had to rescue her or something like that. But after that, I think all the other books more or less, there might have been the main hero might have been a boy that was introduced at the beginning of the story, but there was always a girl. There's always been a girl who's been the same age and has been his equal and everything, even if they're not introduced in the right at the beginning. In some of them, the girl is the main character, and the boy is the add-on. In that one about World War II, they have to be siblings and they have to be twins for the story to work. That's the only reason why that is. And in the one about the I'm just trying to think now. The one about the Civil War, again, the main character, they're introduced at more or less the same time, so they're equal partners in the story. They have been for quite some time, really.
No, that's great. Always good to mix up, boys and girls there. So this person would like to know, for your paranormal series, will you reread your books before you start writing books 4 through 6?
Oh, that's a very interesting. Isn't that an interesting question? I wish I thought to answer. That is. I have not read them in all the way through. I thought about reading them first, but I have because I wrote books 2 and 3. I mean, the first book, in the flashback book, I had read that. I was so familiar with the story of that because it was one of the very earliest ideas that I had, and it took quite a while for me to get a publisher interested in it. So I had read that quite a few times, so I was very familiar with the story. And then when I was going to write a sequel, I read it again, of course, the first one. So I've read the first one quite a few times. and with the second one and the third one, I've been reading certain parts of it occasionally as I've been crafting the fourth one. So yes, I probably will. Once I start writing once I get into that series in earnest and start writing not just number 4, but the 5th and the 6th one, I will probably read the reread the 2nd one and the 3rd one. Again, just to be familiar with, a lot of the time it's because these are not adventures, I suppose, that like a separate adventure with the same characters. They may be they may have elements of the earlier books in the 4th, 5th, and 6th ones. So I will have to make sure that I don't make any mistakes and things. So yes, I will have to read the other ones again.
Yeah, that's great. Like, I know for some authors, like I'm pretty sure like George R.R. Martin, like his stuff is so big that he refers to people online to keep track of it because he can't keep track of it all himself.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, that's the thing. It's the same thing too. If I know when I was when I did the Shadow Zone ones, I had written the first 2, and I had to read the first 2 quite in quite a lot of detail when I was writing the 3rd one. Just simply because even though it wasn't that, even if it's not that long ago, you have to be familiar with what's happened, and with the paranormal ones especially. These have involved alternate realities and different timelines and goodness knows what else. And so you've got to be familiar with those. Even the ones about World War II have been similar to that in some ways as well. So I have to remember what I've done, so that I don't make mistakes. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. We did one more question for you. So
there was another question, like I don't know what it flashed across the screen.
Yeah, so do you use maps, lists of characters, and glossaries in your books?
That's interesting too. There's the Civil War one, the English Civil War one. I have not. I was going to include maps in it, for the English Civil War and where the battles happened and this sort of stuff. I was going to include some maps in the book. And so some of the illustrations and things that were made of Westminster Hall during the King's trial and things like that. But I just wasn't sure if they were going to be when Amazon printed them. I wasn't sure. Well, maybe they might not turn out to be okay when they're printed, and I might not know that the maps hadn't been printed properly or something like that. But it was easier anyway to create a glossary because I've created a glossary on all the details of things like the trial of the King of England and where the battles were in the Civil War and everything. So there is a glossary, or there will be when the book comes out. There will be a glossary at the back on. I don't know how many pages it is. It might be 10 pages or so, with lots of lists of website links and everything to the history behind what's been the history behind the English Civil War and everything that happened in that time period, including links to websites where there are maps where all the different battles took place and everything. Yes. So and there are some maps in some of the other books as well that the publishers put in when I was when they were being traditionally published. I created a map for one of the books as well that was about a fantasy kingdom and things. So occasionally I have, yes, but with this it was important to put a glossary in the back. Yes. The one about, actually, I should say that the one when I do the one about the World War II, that's got the magic in it, and about the early years of World War II and the German conquest of England and things like that. That will have a glossary similar to, it'll be very similarly done to the one about the Civil War. There'll be information in there. I've already got all the links already sorted out, but the book's nowhere near coming out yet. So, but that will probably that will have a glossary in as well about the different history of the war and everything. And because there are some websites which will where you can read all about there was a genuine German plan to invade England, of course, which is very well documented. Just like the trial of the King of England is very well documented. So if people are interested in the other book, so if people are interested in learning more about the history, there's lots of places you can find out this stuff online. So there will definitely be a glossary for the Excalibur experiment when it finally is ready to be published. The paranormal one probably doesn't need a glossary as such, but anything that's historical, I like to be able to do that. Yes, and there'll be stuff on my website too as well when it's done. When the books come out, when the Civil War books come out, there'll be a page on my website, at least one page that will have all these links on it. If people are interested in learning more about it, I'll just put all those links onto a page on the website as well, just like I did for my book about the when I published The Heretic's Tomb, which was about the Black Death, and the one about the mystery of the princes in the tower at the end of the Wars of the Roses. There are pages on that as well. On my website, which tell you all about the history of that particular mystery and Richard III and things like that. I think it's important to have that if people are interested in learning more about it. And sometimes parents want to know as well that the history is the history is accurate and the research has been done properly by the author. They like to know that sometimes when they're buying a book for their children, and knowing that it's properly done. So yeah.
Oh, we got two more here, both at the same time. So we have one of, how do you come up with your characters' names? Have you ever repeated a name? And have you ever decided to change a name as the story develops?
I think I have changed the name as a story has developed sometimes when I've been writing it, just because I didn't like it or I preferred something else. I think that, and again, if people were to put me on the spot, I wouldn't be able to answer it correctly. But this one about World War II, I think the characters did have different names at first, but I just wasn't happy with them. They were just working. They were just working names, I suppose. They were just names I decided on at first when I was writing the story. But what was and the other question was about? I was trying to think now.
Have you ever repeated a name, or have you ever changed the name as the story develops?
Changed names as stories develop. Yes, I have done that before. I've done that before, just because I've just not been happy with. I just ended up not being happy with the name that I chose. I do have a file or a document, I suppose, in the computer, which is just a list of names for characters. Sometimes not just first names, but last names as well. That I have either used already or I will probably use in future, just to keep a note of it, just for me, really. And I think I usually remember which names I've used for the main characters in the stories, so I don't use them twice. I might have used names for adults more than once, but I don't think it's ever been too detrimental to the story and things like that, to be honest. So I probably have, yes, definitely used adult names more than once. And the other question was what? I think in the same.
About have you ever decided to change a name as the story?
Oh yeah, we've done that. We dealt with that, didn't we? Yes.
So the next question is, do you write in dialect sometimes? And if so, which ones do you find are easier to write? And do you write some characters, do you write so some characters have accents when they speak?
I usually avoided it myself, just because I think I have read a lot of books where accents have been done incorrectly, and it has been a little bit irritating and by the author, and so I resolved that I would never actually do that myself. But that's just personal preference. I know that with I think it was in the Harry Potter books, I remember that the character of Hagrid, the gamekeeper, groundskeeper at Hogwarts or whatever, he is speaks in dialect throughout the story and everything. And sometimes it was in the books anyway. It was very, very difficult to tell what he was saying sometimes. And I appreciate what the author was trying to do, I suppose, to establish this character and everything. But it just didn't work for me, and I found myself sometimes just skipping over his dialogue in the books when I was reading them. If it wasn't important, I wasn't too concerned. And then when they released the movies, of course, the actor who played Hagrid was speaking in that accent from the western part of England, and the actor was well known as being Scottish. So it didn't seem to work for me. And sometimes accents can be done very well. Sometimes accents are done well, whether it's the British ones, whether it's Scottish, whether it's from London, whether it's from Liverpool or wherever it may be, or Wales or Ireland. Sometimes it's done well, but the times that it's not done well sort of put me off a little bit. So no, it's not something that I do. Personal preference, though. That's all.
Yeah, that's very fair. Especially where we have so many accents all around that you really want to make sure you nail it. All right. Well, if anyone else has any questions, then they can type them away right now. If not, though, I would just like to I guess we could wrap it up, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. And if you've been coming out every night, we'd greatly appreciate your reoccurring appearances here. Thank you so much, Simon, for all of your work this month, to be here, to be working with the people of Airdrie, be working here with the library. We greatly appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun to be able to do this, and we're really, really pleased that with the turnout and everything, and how things have gone. So we'll hopefully be doing another one of these, but it'll be big shoes to fill next year for whoever would be the person. So thank you so much, Simon, for all of your.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for honoring me with this position for the last month. I mean, I've obviously not met everyone in these gatherings, because it's all been online, but a lot of the people who've been to these things, I've had the pleasure of working with their material as well. In the one-on-one sessions, and sometimes people have just simply been wanting to know about the next steps, what they're going to do next about publishing and marketing and things like that. So we do have, of course, one more day. If anyone's that interested and desperate to I am available tomorrow, aren't I suppose, on the 30th. But it's only one day, if anyone is interested in a one-on-one session, I suppose, but I don't know if there'd be enough time to do it or not.
Yeah, no, one more day till your freedom.
Yes. Yes, I suppose so. Yeah. But no, it's been wonderful. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself doing this, and so it's not over yet though. I do have a meeting with an Airdrie writer tomorrow, and we'll be chit-chatting about her material. So that's going to be that's tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow afternoon. So
yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
Well, once again, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you have enjoyed tonight and you have a great night. We'll hopefully see you in the library, and thank you again to Simon for all of your work tonight and all month long.
All right. Well, thank you very much.